3 prison officials have been stabbed by 2 inmates at St. Albans Correctional Centre in Gqeberha. In his confirmation of the incident, Department of Correctional Services spokesperson Singabako Nxumalo says the incident took place during breakfast this morning at the facility's Medium B section. A full-scale investigation will be conducted internally and a criminal case has been registered with the SABC. Furthermore, Nxumalo says such an incident will not go unpunished and the department will use all available measures in law to take action against the perpetrators. Now, this incident happens a month after Correctional Services National Commissioner Makgoti Thobakgale led raids at the facility's maximum section. All right, let's get into this conversation now. The ANC's 55th National Conference is scheduled to take place from the 16th to the 20th of December 2022 at the Johannesburg Expo Centre in Nasrec. SABC News specialist researcher Zinziswa Mani joins me in studio to discuss the ANC's history. Zinziswa, thank you so much for your time, this afternoon. 9 days exactly, to the conference. So we're going to be starting doing these snippets in terms of delving into the history of this party. I mean, at the core of its identity, it's spanning 110 years. So talk to us about where it all began. I think you're going to trace our steps back to 1912.
Yes, indeed, Unati. Thank you so much for having me on the show. We'll just trace back to the origins of the party back in 1912.
Okay.
So the party basically started out on the 8th of January it was formed on the 8th of January in 1912. This was in Bloemfontein, and it was originally called the South African Native National Congress. By 1923, it was then renamed the ANC. And the song or the hymn that was sung at the opening was Nkosi Sikelel' iAfrika. This became the song of the liberation movement, even the Pan-African movement, like countries like Zambia, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, and Namibia also adopted this song. And the founders, this was John Langalibalele Dube, and he became the president he was the first African National Congress president. And in 1918, the Bantu Women's League was formed as a branch of the ANC, but they were only accepted as members in 1943, and in 1948, the Congress gave birth to the ANC Women's League.
And I'm glad you actually showed, who the first president was in 1912. And of course, that was John Dube, because we are currently running a poll, and I will remind our viewers about that poll in terms of, just how many presidents were there, in the party since 110. But let's also just quickly discuss that last point about the women that were not allowed to join the party, since its inception. In fact, it was many years later, I think 1948, where 1943 when they were accepted. And of course, the ANC Women's League was then formed in 1948. I mean, it just also shines a spotlight currently on how women are currently treated in the party today. I mean, it's still a struggle, actually, for them to get those roles instead of being placed deputy or, to actually get those leadership roles. And it's something that the ANC Women's League has talked about. It's also something that the NEC members have also raised. Okay, so what happens next in terms of the era, following that 1948, where the ANC Women's League was actually formed?
Okay, so the following era that we see the emergence of the ANC Youth League, which was established by Anton Lembede with the likes of Mandela, Sisulu, and Tambo and them. And these guys were very militant. They came and brought in the vibe, and they wanted freedom now. And by 1960, the ANC and the PAC were banned from political activities in South Africa. I think I want to go back to that, what these guys, the Youth League, Okay, then the banning prompted the formation of Umkhonto weSizwe, the military group of the ANC. And this is actually also a consequence of the ANC Youth League. These guys, as I said, they were militant, these guys, and we saw them, the guys, Mandela, Mandela and his group, the ones who got arrested, Rivonia trial, and because at that time there was repression and everything. In 1967, we see Oliver Tambo becoming the president of the ANC, successor to Chief Albert Luthuli, who was under house arrest at that time. And already they were in exile, in fact, in 1967, when we see them. Okay.
We wanted to get back to this 1944 reference.
Yes. I think what was important here, we see an emergence of young people taking control and taking back their power and mobilizing people. We saw the emergence of things like the Defiance Campaign and the Congress of the People. And it was also, after these events, we saw even around 1955, the Freedom Charter happened. And it was around this time more and more repression happened because they were clamping down these people because they were actually starting to get people more involved in the struggle.
And I suppose the fight back then was clearly defined. You know, Samkele Maseko was speaking to Oscar Mabuyane earlier on. Of course, he is the hopeful for ANC deputy president. So one of the things that he said is that they want to see that revolutionary leadership back into the fold. It almost begs the question then, you know, if you look at the ANC Youth League role back then in the era that you've just mentioned, you know, of Walter Sisulu, of Oliver Tambo and Mandela and the likes, you then wonder what the core message for the ANC Youth League of today is. What is their fight? What is their relevance? You know, so all of those questions, of course, leading up to the national conference will be asked because they also too have a role to play.
True, that's very true.
So now we are looking at the era of the 1969 going onwards to, you know, the 1990 era. Talk to us through that space.
Yes. So in 1969, the headquarters at that time was still in Tanzania. And the ANC had its Morogoro conference. This is where membership was open to all the races. And the following conference that happened afterwards is the Kabwe Consultative Conference that happened in Lusaka, Zambia. At this time, Oliver Tambo is still president. In fact, he was the longest serving president of the ANC. He was president from 1967 until 91 when they had elections and they elected Mandela as the new ANC president. But throughout exile years, it was O.R. Tambo who was steering the ship. And by the mid-80s, the pressure was on. There was a lot that had happened from the 70s when we had seen the 76 kids. A lot of people went to exile afterwards, but also a lot of movements formed, the mass democratic movement and all of that. And there was pressure from the world, and then that laid the foundation of the democratic South Africa, because negotiations then started happening. And the late 80s then were characterized by these negotiations with the apartheid government, with the business community, and it then resulted to the unbanning of political movements in 1990.
And perhaps, since it's important for us to just remind our viewers why we are, you know, in conversation about the ANC's history. You know, it's not only just because it's running up to, you know, the national conference, the 55th national conference on the 16th of December, which we, as we rightfully said, is 9 days' time, but also it's to look at just some of the history in terms of its leadership At the moment, you know, some of its contentions are as a result of that leadership, which is lacking, factionalism being spoken about very deeply, and of course, the issue of renewal now coming up more than ever. But as you've just unpacked the history, we do see, though, there were some contentious moments for the ANC, for this party, you know, dating back to the 1970s.
That is true. It actually dates back to the 50s because the first breakaway party, the PAC, they didn't see eye to eye about non-racialism, and then they broke away. And this also led to Sharpeville, the banning of political parties. That was the first major divisions that you could see in the parties. So you saw that also happening while they were in exiles. There were disagreements between some of the members, and they didn't always see eye to eye. So this is nothing new, as you say.
Zinziswa, thank you so much for your time this afternoon and just unpacking for us the history all the way back to 1912. Really do appreciate it. Zinziswa Mani there, and she is, of course, with our research department, just giving us a glimpse of the party that is going into its 55th national conference in 9 days' time.